Welcome aboard the Athletics Can't Wait Jets podcast, your nonstop shop for all things Jets with Tim McMaster, Zack Rosenblatt, and Marissa Dunn.
Can't wait.
If you're checking us out on YouTube, check out all the great sponsors in the description. Click on the links and definitely give them some attention. All right. Week 14, and the Jets are still playing huge football games. That's the joy here in 2022, something that I think even when you thought about playing relevant football games in December, it didn't necessarily mean playing games that could be a step towards potentially winning a division title. All the big things that can come out of this week. So we have a lot to get to here. This is the Can't Wait podcast. Tim McMaster here along with Zack Rosenblatt, our Jets reporter at The Athletic, and Marissa Dunn, our producer. We have a lot to get to. The game preview, of course. We'll also talk about the situation around Max Mitchell and why he's now done for the season, unfortunately, for this Jets team. We'll talk a little bit about Zonovan Knight and a lot about Mike White as well. I am back in the chilly northeast of San Diego, which is
welcome back to the dark side.
Yeah, it was nice though. It was a nice few days in the sunny warmth.
San Diego's the best, isn't it? Every time I'm there, I'm like, why would anybody ever leave this place?
Yeah,
it's funny because everyone there for the winter meetings was basically like, why don't we all live here? Why doesn't the whole world?
It's expensive, but so is New York.
That's the one.
So.
Yeah, that's the one downside. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like some people use that excuse, but I want to be like, well, you know,
it's not like it's cheap where we are.
City,
yeah,
so
right.
That's not going to fly. Apparently, from what I judged, overall, it's a little less expensive than LA.
What you Aaron judged overall.
Yes, what I judged, and less expensive than San Francisco. So really, if you live in California, no excuse.
It also depends on where you live in San Diego, because there's so many different areas in San Diego too.
I mean, the gas lamp now is all. I mean, everything looks. There's so many new modern buildings down there, even though it's like the historic district of downtown San Diego. But that's where we were. The hotel was in the gas lamp right across the street from Petco Park, and all the events are over at the Hyatt on the waterfront. So.
I have to think about people who get to go to USD for college, right in, I think it's in La Jolla.
That's
or
a really
whatever.
nice campus.
Just overlooking the water and the beach.
Yeah.
Being able to walk to the beach while you're in college just sounds dangerous to me.
Yeah, and I went to Syracuse where it snowed.
I went to Arizona, so I can't really say that much. But
I'm still wearing the hat. So
I mean, I think I just, for fairness, have to point out last pod we did discuss the Mets big signing, and you kind of tried to slyly throw it in there, but Aaron Judge back in New York, 9 years. I mean, what were you gonna say?
About Mike White.
It was wild. It was a wild sequence. What happened with the news around Aaron Judge is what I'll say.
I know. So
Aaron Judge, and then we got up. That news broke on the West Coast at 5:30. So that was an early start. I was on the set with Ken Rosenthal at 8:30 recording something.
Wow.
And then not only that, it was double bad, Marissa. I mean, people probably realize on this show that I like the Red Sox.
Unfortunately,
Tim's
one downfall in life.
Then Xander Bogaerts signs with the Padres because they didn't get Judge. It was the Yankees. But anyway, I would much rather share Mets news on this show than Yankee news. So let's get back to it.
Well, we have to be fair to all of our New York fans here. We might have both. Jets fans could be both. So
yeah, absolutely. I do know some Jet fans that are Yankee fans too.
Yeah, there you go.
It is funny to me, as somebody who's not from this area originally, how it seems like most of the time it's Yankees and Giants and Mets and Jets. I don't know how. I guess that's just how their parents raised them, but it's just so funny to me that each of those two teams. And the two more miserable ones are latched together than the two that consider themselves high and mighty. It's
it is really interesting. Funny. And because the Yankees and Giants have obviously been around longer.
Yeah.
There's the more history there.
Mm-hmm.
Mets. A lot of Mets fans are come from Dodger fans, Giant fans, who lost their teams and became
or they're him.
Oh geez.
He has a question.
There's a Met fan.
Connor is interrupting for audio listeners.
Yeah, did Hanukkah start?
We are 4 minutes in.
Okay, all right, we were wondering. Sorry.
If you interrupted him on a live SNY, what would happen?
I don't know. I don't remember the exact dates. Around Christmas.
How do you not know?
I'm up. Leave me alone.
I'm gonna write to the Jets PR staff and have a lock installed.
Yeah. Is there? No, there's no lock.
What did he need to know?
He wanted to know when Hanukkah starts.
He couldn't Google that?
It's a very easy Google. December 18th.
Oh my God. Yes, December 18th. Oh my God.
Anyway, speaking of,
we talk about the Jets.
Yeah.
Yes, Mike White. This is a great story, Zach. I'm very excited that you got to tell this story.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I can get the plug in for The Athletic right now. $2 a month for a year. Go to theathletic.com/can't wait. And you can read Zach's awesome story that came out this morning on Mike White and basically the split between Mike White, the quarterback, and Mike White, the father. You interviewed his wife, Mallory. You didn't interview the twins because they're like 1.5.
But he said they do say like some words, like dad, mama, all that good stuff. They don't say Mike effing White yet. I don't know when they're going to start saying that.
That's actually fascinating because at some point when they're around, like fans are going to start being like, your dad is Mike effing White. All right. So I wanted to get into the story a little bit because it's so good.
Thanks.
I feel like people have learned a lot about Mike White since his time playing last year up to now. But this was like a little more, I think, because you spent a lot of time talking to Mallory and getting her kind of viewpoint, which is cool. Just so people that don't know, they met when she was a cheerleader and he was a freshman at South Florida. And then he went from South Florida, obviously, to Western Kentucky, where he lit it up, and that led to him being drafted. But so they've been together through pretty much it all, right? Like a college transfer, being drafted by the Cowboys, losing the competition with the Cowboys, getting released and not even signed to the practice squad.
Yeah.
And then the questions there, and then coming to the Jets, and obviously, being released back on the Jets, and then finally to what happened last year and what's happening right now. It's been obviously a roller coaster ride. And in 2020, in the middle of the pandemic, they had twins. So let's start there because, he says in the story, Mike White always wanted to be a father, but he didn't necessarily want to be a father of two at the same time right away.
Yeah. I mean, look, I don't have kids. You do, Tim. I'm sure like when you found out you were having
I do, and I can't. Every time someone has twins, I'm just like,
I'm one of my close friends. Like one of my close friends, his name's Justin. He had twin girls a year ago, and I texted him when I was doing the story. I'm like, you can relate to this, I bet, right? He's like, oh yeah, we're the same person. So first Mallory told the story to me, and then he elaborated on it a little bit. He wanted to be a dad forever. She said when she told him she was pregnant, he like practically jumped out of his skin. He was so excited. And then she was having like a hard pregnancy where she was throwing up like 7 to 10 times a day, and she was like miserable. And she said, or Mike actually said this detail. He said there was one day where she was throwing up, and she like turns to him and she's like, you better hope there's 2 in there because I'm not having another one. And then sure enough, they go to the ultrasound, and they're, I don't know the terminology. They're doing the wand thing. My editor was laughing because I'm like, you need to help me with the words here. And they see the first one obviously, and then he like keeps going, and she's like, there's just one in there, right? And he's like, oh no, there's twins. And then Mike he said it sounds fake, but I literally couldn't feel my legs after that. Like it's like they went numb. And then he goes to his car. He starts doing what anybody does in that situation. They start freaking out about money in the future. 2 colleges, 2 cars. He said, if there are 2 girls, that's 2 weddings. And he's like, I'm going down this dark path and stuff. Very human moment. And I thought it was like a perfect, like you put that next to who, Mike White is as a quarterback, like the things that like, he doesn't get rattled by anything in the game. And it was just like kind of funny to me that this thing he's waited for his whole life. He's waited to be a quarterback and he's waited to be a dad. And the dad thing was where he had like the freak out moment. It doesn't seem like he has had many freak out moments on the football field. But yeah, this is a story I wanted to write because anytime even before he became the starter again, like I even remember talking to him in training camp when I was doing a story on the quarterback room, and asking him about, because he became a cult hero last year, as everybody knows, and I asked him about whenever you go into the practice field during camp, everybody's yelling out Mike F and White. You have fans anytime Zach Wilson struggles, they were calling for Mike White, and I'm like how do you how do you ignore all that, or how do you feel about all that? And he said, when I go home, I have to deal with my 2 crazy kids running around. And that, so it's very easy for him to focus on the kids. And so that was in the back of my head. And then we get to the season and he gets bumped up to the 2nd string quarterback randomly, as we've talked about on here. And the same thing, somebody asked him again, what do you think about the possibility that you're going to have to start at some point? Or, what's it like when the fan, again, like he's asked about the fans always calling for him and stuff. And he says the same thing. He's like, honestly, I don't, it's not hard for me to not to ignore that stuff, because when I go home, I'm focused on my kids. And then again, it comes up, and he kind of says it out of the blue this time. Or I think somebody asked him if he thinks he can go out there and prove that he can be this, because that's like the big topic right now. And we're going to get into that, obviously. Like, can he go out and prove that he's the Jets quarterback for this year and beyond? And he started like going to, he's like, when I'm here, I'm the Jets quarterback. When I go home, I'm Mallory and Maddox's dad. And so he said it enough times. It was almost like he was asking somebody to write it. So I'm like, I might as well reach out to his wife. Cause I don't know, just the ability to, I mean, I don't have kids again, obviously, but like to be able to go home and to be as famous as he is, as popular as he is around here, all the attention he's getting, all the pressure he has, like the way he's able to flip the switch when he goes home, it is pretty fascinating to me. And it would be very easy for him to go on his phone and go on social media and get, tied up in all the nice things everybody's saying about him. But his ability to do that then it makes sense why when he goes out on the field, he's able to stay strong in the pocket when he's getting pressured. When he struggles, it doesn't bother him. When he doesn't struggle, it doesn't change how he acts. Everybody in the locker room says about how he's the same guy now as he was when he was third string earlier in the year. Like his consistency, his coolness, I guess, like just staying level is very impressive to me for a guy who's only started 5 games in the NFL. And I really do think the moment he had his twins, like really like flipped a switch for him. Like it was like something changed, because he talked about that Cowboys battle recently where he said he was he like knew he was fighting for his job with Cooper Rush to back up Dak Prescott, and it like consumed him, and he brought it home with him, and it affected the way he played. Like he looks back and he thinks about that now, and he said it made sense that they cut me because I was not playing well. So between that and then finding out he's having twins, like, and then having them and all the struggles they went through when they had them, because it was like that was part of the story. Because it was when they were going to Green Bay for the joint practices. But
yeah, I wanted to talk about that real quick, because it is wild. And you think about, I mean, most people, I think, me included, when the baby's born, you get through that and you're there, right? And you're there for a while and hopefully have some time off.
Yeah.
It's different for pro athletes. So they were born. He flew when she went into labor. He flew from New York City to Tampa Bay, which is where she was, while the team was going to Green Bay for that week of practice last year. He got to the hospital 30 minutes before the C-section birth, so surgery involved here, with twins. He stayed up all night going between the NICU and his wife, checking on the babies, checking on his wife. And then he had a 3 p.m. flight.
And they were premature, by the way, too. So it's like it wasn't expected that he was going to have to do that. Yeah.
Right. So extra worry, extra concern, like extra stress. 3 p.m. flight that next day to Green Bay with a layover in Chicago. So he gets there 1:30 a.m. and they have to practice at 7 a.m. And he said he had his best practice of the year on like zero sleep. But I thought what stood out to that was he said it was because I didn't think, I just played. And it feels like that was a turning moment too. Like that practice was like a key moment for him in realizing, like, if I don't think too much, I can play my best football.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, look, it's not like he's never looking at film or anything when he's at home. I'm sure when the kids go down to bed, maybe he pulls out the iPad or something like that. But I think there's something to be said for the only thing he was thinking about the entire time was about his wife and his kids. When he's flying, he's freaking out that he's leaving. He hated that he had to leave. You wound up not even seeing them for a couple of weeks just because of the schedule. And she was staying in Florida with the family because they don't really have family in New Jersey. She didn't move up until later in the season. So he was like FaceTiming them constantly. One of the funny things, and I don't think it made it in the story, but she said that she noticed that he has a lot of 5-minute windows to call her. And she's like, that's very interesting that you all of a sudden have all these 5-minute windows where you can answer your phone. I'm sure Marissa can relate to that, honestly. So I think that was a very big, like, eye-opening moment, I think, for him, where he was so tired that it was hard for him to even like process everything that was happening, but he goes out and has a great practice. And I think the not thinking part is a big thing. Not to always bring it back to Zach Wilson, but I think you could tell a lot of the times with the way he was when he was out there, like you kind of feel the nerves, you can kind of feel that he was overthinking things, that he was trying to win every play. And the one thing that Mike has been saying since day one, he being the starter, is that he's not trying to play hero ball kind of thing. And I think that all ties back to the personality and who Mike is when he leaves the building. And I like doing that with stories. I like peeling back the curtain and showing who these guys are when they go home. And I think, I mean, Mike obviously, and a big part of that is how I also wanted to do it to explain how he's so well liked in the locker room. And I got some stuff from his wife about that, but yeah, I don't know. I'm happy that story worked out the way it did. You never know when you reach out to somebody close to a player if they're going to be willing to talk. And clearly she was like, she's just very proud of him in the way he's been able to balance being a dad with being an NFL quarterback. And I think it was a cool story. I'm happy I got to write it.
Yeah, there's a lot more great stuff in there. We won't give it all away because we want you to write it, to go and read it for sure. But the stuff about his friends and text threads and all of that is just fascinating and good stuff. So let's take a quick break. We actually have more to talk about with Mike White when we come back, but we got to get a break in here. We'll also talk about Max Mitchell, this huge Bills game, and our picks. So stay with us.
Fall is chaos in your pants. You're overheating 1 second, freezing the next. To be ready for anything, you need underwear that can handle everything. It's time for Tommy John underwear. In Tommy John underwear, you're that much more comfortable, so you can do everything better. Name a problem with other underwear, and Tommy John has solved it. Tommy John's breathable, lightweight fabric has 4 times the stretch of competing brands. They come with a no wedgie guarantee, thanks to a non-rolling waistband and legs that never ride up. Plus, they feature a horizontal quick draw fly. With over 18 million pairs sold, people love Tommy John underwear. That's why Tommy John doesn't have customers. They have fanatics. Plus, everything's backed with Tommy John's best pair you'll ever wear or it's free guarantee. So go to TommyJohn.com/athletic right now for 20% off your first order. 20% off at TommyJohn.com/athletic. TommyJohn.com/athletic. See site for details.
Are you wasting money on subscriptions? 80% of people have subscriptions they forget about. Maybe for you, it's an unused Amazon Prime account or a Hulu account that never gets streamed. There's this great app I use that helps me track all of my expenses, and because of it, I no longer waste money on subscriptions I don't even use. You might have heard of it. It's called Rocket Money, formerly known as Truebill. The app shows all of your subscriptions in one place and then cancels for you whatever you don't still want. Rocket Money can even find subscriptions you didn't even know you were paying for. You may even find out you've been double charged for a subscription. This has actually happened to me several times. To cancel a subscription, all you have to do is press cancel, and Rocket Money takes care of the rest. It's super easy. Get rid of the useless subscriptions with Rocket Money now. Go to rocketmoney.com/athletic. Seriously, it could save you hundreds per year. That's rocketmoney.com/athletic. Cancel your unnecessary subscriptions right now at rocketmoney.com/athletic.
All right, we've talked about Mike White, the human, and the dad, but this is a huge week for Mike White, the quarterback. Obviously, he's facing his demons to a degree. The game that got away a year ago, 4 interceptions against the Buffalo Bills, and that was it for the Mike White experiment in 2021 as the team went back to Zach Wilson eventually. And honestly, if he throws 4 interceptions on Sunday, I could see the same thing happening. So let's just get into the possibilities here of like Mike White and where he can go with this game. Obviously, Zach, if they win this game, if they beat the Buffalo Bills, I think Mike White's your quarterback the rest of the year. I feel like there's no way they can change that. If they lose and it's close, it's obviously tough. I think if they lose and he's terrible, we may see Zach Wilson sooner rather than later. But what do you think about all that?
My gut tells me they stick with Mike going forward, regardless. Honestly, unless Mike got hurt or something. I just don't see it being a complete disaster. And even if it was, you do have to factor in who they're playing. I mean, the Bills are a great defense, and would Zach have done any better? I don't think so. Again, I mean, their defense is healthier. I mean, minus Von Miller than they were when Zach was there. Like the secondary, which is the biggest thing. They're going to enjoy Emporia back. I think Matt Milano isn't definitely playing this week. They don't have one of their defensive tackles, so I guess their defensive line's banged up. But I don't know. I think it'd be hard to go back to Zach, and I can't imagine. It's only been 2 weeks now that he's had, or I guess 3 weeks of practice of him with the scout team and stuff like that, and I can't imagine they've seen enough yet to put him back out there. If they're resetting him, it's going to take more than 3 weeks. That's just the reality. So
yeah,
I just don't see them going away from Mike, especially they can downplay it if we bring it up all they want, but it's pretty obvious how much this locker room loves him. Like, I mean, that was in the story I wrote, and even yesterday at Mike's press conference, at the end of it, Elijah Moore, who famously, a very happy fella all season, comes up and asks like a question like, so what do you think of the receiver room? And then Mike starts jokingly listing off everybody but Elijah. And then he's like, oh, and Elijah Moore. And everybody starts laughing. And then Michael Carter comes up and does the same thing. Like, I know it's easy to overblow the stuff, and it's not, you can't even say when they're winning because they just lost. But it's so obvious. Garrett Wilson has made it pretty clear which quarterback he prefers, I think, and both in his play and in his quotes. So I don't know. I just don't think you can go away from it if the goal is to make the playoffs. If the goal is to evaluate Zach, which I guess there's an argument for that to a degree, then maybe you think about going back to him. But I just don't see the switch happening right now. I mean, if it was going to happen, it would have to be the Lions game, as we've talked about, because then you turn around quick to the Jaguars games on a Thursday, and then you're not going to play him. You're not going to make him return the second to last week of the season again, unless there's injuries. So it's I don't know. I think it's less like when we talked about this like a week or two ago, I think we looked at this as the game as would be the deciding factor. I'm not as sure about that. I feel pretty confident they're going to stick with him. Like I'd probably, I don't know, put that at like 85% confidence that they stick with him, 80%. I'm not 100% sure that they do keep saying they want to go back to Zach at some point. I don't know how much of that is just for Zach to hear coming out of Robert Saleh's mouth. But I don't know. I feel confident enough that Mike White, at the very least, is capable of, even if he's just checking the ball down all game and his numbers don't look amazing at the end of the day, I don't see him going out there and losing the game for them. I just don't see that.
Because that's what Zach did against Buffalo the first time around when they did get the win. He threw for 154 yards in that game. He did what he had to do, and we talked about that as a positive at the time, obviously, but it's gone. It's kind of gone the other way. The Elijah Moore thing, though, does stand out. I mean, this is a guy who was unhappy enough to demand a trade in his second season as a pro wide receiver just a month ago, and now he's interrupting press conferences to joke around with his quarterback. I mean, that's a big change, and it just goes to show what a quarterback like Mike White, who's a kind of, I guess, man of the people, can do for chemistry on a team, because he can kind of just bring everyone together, and it's pretty wild. All right, let's talk about Max Mitchell a little bit. This was kind of confusing middle of the week, but now we have a lot more focus on it. Yeah. He was put on the non-football injury list, probably because of a lot of reasons. They weren't really specific about it. But now we know that it's blood clot related, which is obviously scary, but it's really good that they found it, figured it out when they did. He actually has a hereditary condition called Leiden. One of those.
Never heard of it. I don't know.
So basically, he's on blood thinning medication, but at this point, it obviously, it was a slip up. So he was right calf and lung. So it's scary stuff, and we hope the best for Max Mitchell for sure. And I don't think it was specifically said anywhere, Zach, but this is, why he played badly last week, right?
Yeah, I think that's pretty safe to say. I think they discovered it after the game, so I think that means he was probably playing with it. I think there was something like Rich Cimini went into detail in his story for ESPN. I think he felt something weird in the side, or there was something, or in his arm. There was something. I forget the exact detail, but
and trouble breathing too.
Which, it's like something felt off.
Blood clots in your lungs,
and then they took him out. They said because he wasn't playing well. I imagine part of the reason why he was playing well because he was feeling not himself. That's scary stuff. Anytime you hear something that's unrelated to football, like it's an internal thing. I'm not a doctor. Like I don't entirely understand blood clots and stuff like that, but I know it's not a good thing. They seem pretty confident that it's not going to be a long-term thing. It's good that they caught it when they did, and something worse didn't happen, or he didn't, get hurt during the game while this is happening to him and stuff like that. So you're happy that he's going to be okay, and we'll see what it means for his place with the team, and if he can be a starter next year and all that stuff. That's down the line talk. But this goes back to we've kind of. So I joked about this with our Bills writer Joe on his podcast earlier. Somebody tweeted this at me, and I compare the Jets' offensive tackle situation to the defense against the dark arts teachers in Harry Potter. I don't know if you guys are Harry Potter guys. I say what's more unsafe, like being a defense against the dark arts teacher at Hogwarts or an offensive tackle for the Jets, because they've gone through like 6 guys have been on injured reserve or something crazy like that. I've never seen anything like it. I mean, Joe Douglas deserves a lot, and fans were ready to criticize him before the season for the lack of depth that he had to tackle it. I mean, you can't plan for this, and I think they've held down pretty well. And they're back to the original expected starters from week 1, ironically, for the first time with Dwayne Brown and George Fant. But losing Max Mitchell is tough. He was at the very least going to be their swing tackle. He's a guy that they are very high on for the future, and it just brings more questions into what this means for their offensive tackle. Their offensive tackle room is going to be fascinating this offseason. Something we're not going to get. We don't need to talk about the offseason yet, obviously. But I mean, you have Mekhi Becton in theory coming back. You have Mitchell in theory coming back. George Fant free agent. Dwayne Brown is under contract for next year. So what's Joe Douglas going to do? That's going to be one of the biggest storylines to me. But yeah, losing Max Mitchell is tough, especially the way it did seem to come out of nowhere. I wasn't here for this, but it kind of felt like the Sam Darnold mono press conference where nobody knew that it was coming. And then Robert Saleh is like, we placed Max Mitchell on NFI and he's out for the year. And I think there was like a silence. Everybody's like, wait, what? And he wouldn't go into detail. So we had no idea what happened. But yeah, so they move forward with George Fant. Mike Remmers is the third tackle based on the curse of the tackles this season. I wouldn't be surprised if he played at some point. But it's not ideal. But I think the offensive line, this just group of 5, if they can stay healthy, can be a solid group. So George Fant being healthy, if he can play like he did last year, that would be a pretty big boost for this group.
It is a big stretch for George Fant, I feel like, in his career, right? We're here week 14, and coming into the year, he was the guy. There was plenty of confidence over what he did last year that he could hold down one of those tackle spots. But it's been a rough go between the injuries and not playing quite as well, and in his defense getting moved around a little bit too. But now it seems like, here's your spot. You got, week 14 to the end of the season. You need to step up to help this team get to the playoffs. And he's either going to, I think, reestablish himself for another team and what he's going to get in the offseason, or, convince the Jets that they want to hang on to him.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be highly motivated, which is a good thing for the Jets for the stretch. I do question whether he'll come back, because I think he was pretty open with his frustration with how much he's been moved back and forth between left and right tackle. He was very good at left tackle last year. He wasn't as good at right tackle the year before. He clearly wants to be a left tackle. Doesn't really have that option, ironically, because of Dwayne Brown, who took his job, I think, back in the day in Seattle too. But yeah, this is he's going to be he's like an X factor down the stretch, because if he can solidify that right tackle spot, which has had so many iterations of who's starting there this season, if he can solidify that the rest of the way, they can get some consistent offensive line play, that would be huge, especially for someone like Mike White, who doesn't necessarily need a lot of time because he's not running around. But if you just give him a little bit of time and enough time to process and go through his reads and stuff like that, it could be a really big boon for the offense. Because I think Nate Herbig's been solid, Connor McGovern's solid, Lakin Thomas a little inconsistent, and Dwayne Brown inconsistent because of his shoulder thing. But if the right side can get locked in and get the run blocking going, and you have Bam Knight in the backfield and stuff like that, I don't know. I feel like George Fant should be better suited to play well now than he was at the beginning of the year when he was clearly still bothered by his knee. It seems like that's not as big of an issue now. So he's something to keep an eye on for sure.
Zonovan Knight got his shot and obviously capitalized and improved himself last week. Well, really over the last 2 weeks. So what's the state of the running back room right now? Obviously he's the guy to start, but where does it stack up behind him? Michael Carter eventually healthy, all of that stuff heading into this week.
Yeah, Michael Carter has been full all week, so he'll be back. I am curious to see what that looks like now. If we're going to find out how much they really want to lean on Bam Knight, because I know they like Michael Carter, but if you look at after Brees went down, it's not like Carter was getting a lot of carries. He was still splitting with James Robinson. Ty Johnson was getting in there, so I still feel like you got to feed the hot hand. That's kind of the line they use a lot, and Bam Knight clearly has some juice. That's the word they keep using too. And so I think. You saw the way they beat the Bills the last time. They're going to be able to throw the ball or they're going to try to be more willing to throw the ball this time. You remember that last drive, they ran it 10 straight times for 60 yards on the last drive alone. And that's kind of what sealed the game. It was a comeback win that involved running the ball, which is pretty rare. So they need the running game to get going. They're going to have to pass the ball more, but I think Bam Knight has pretty clearly earned the RB1 if not the RB1, at least like a 50-50 split with Carter, with Johnson coming in on passing downs. I think James Robinson is probably going to be inactive again. I don't see why you would play him at this point. It's pretty crazy how quickly that fell off.
It makes you wonder, like, thinking back, right? Instead of making that trade, maybe they should have just given Bam a chance back then. But I mean, it's not like they gave up a lot.
Yeah, and it was like a quick thing because Brees got injured on Sunday and the trade deadline was Tuesday, so they had to think fast. Right. I'm sure it's part of it. The one thing I go back to is I don't get why they didn't trade for Jeff Wilson on the 49ers, knows the offense. The Dolphins got him for a 5th, and he's been like really, really good for Miami. But anyway, that, hindsight's 50-50, and maybe they had the guy in the building the whole time. You can criticize Joe for the Robinson trade if you want, but I also think you can praise him because this team has been able to plug any hole that has opened up. They've been able to plug it with somebody this year. It's been like, even at receiver, they kept Denzel Mims for a reason. And then when Corey Davis went down, you saw why. And you're seeing that at running back with Bam, and you've seen it on defense and on offense. And I think Joe Douglas built this roster in such a way that they have legitimate depth. And that's something to be said for that, for a team that won 4 games last year, to have that, like, have this much depth of talent this year. And Bam Knight's, I think, the best example of that.
Yeah, undrafted free agents. They make the NFL spin, right? Gotta have them to keep that roster solid. All right, let's take a second quick break. When we come back, Bills preview and picks heading into Week 14.
In baseball, what team won the first World Series? Play Sports Trivia Star now and prove your knowledge. Sports Trivia Star is a free mobile trivia game that tests your knowledge in basketball, football, soccer, and baseball. Choose which sport you know the best to test your knowledge. It sounds simple, but the questions increase in difficulty as you progress. Collect a bonus every day you play more. In addition, you'll have an opportunity to test your general sports knowledge with a question of the day from a random sports category. I love playing trivia, so this is so cool because honestly, I don't know much about geography or world history, but sports, that's my area of expertise, so this is so cool. If you like sports like I do, you'll love Sports Trivia Star. Download it today to challenge yourself. Just go to the Apple or Google store and search for Sports Trivia Star. Download Sports Trivia Star for free today and get ready to flex your brain muscles.
Amazingly, the Jets can play the no respect card again this week because they are 10-point underdogs heading to Buffalo. I was actually a little surprised by the line. Especially with this defense, that it would be double digits. But hey, post that in the locker room, right? Look back on that last meeting. We talked about it a little bit, but the Jets won 20-17. Zach Wilson was 18 of 25, 154 yards. He had a touchdown, no interceptions, and it was a game in which we kind of celebrated Zach after the game for doing the little things, not trying to do too much, and all of that stuff. Since then, obviously, he's been benched. Josh Allen in that game was not good. 18 of 34, 205 yards, no touchdowns, 2 picks. He did rush it 9 times for 86 yards and scored. But he also injured himself late in that game. And Zach, his overall numbers have been good since then. And obviously the Bills have been playing good football, but he hasn't been the same guy since that elbow injury. 5 straight games where he is under 8 yards per attempt. This is a guy in an offense where they sling it, they throw it deep. Stephon Diggs gets open. Last week, the only throw that went over 20 yards was to a running back. It wasn't to Stephon Diggs. So it's a different offense, I think, than the one the Jets faced last time.
Even beyond that, it feels like these are almost 2 different teams from the last time they played. If you think about it in a lot of ways, the Jets changed quarterbacks. They got Corey Davis back. They have George Fant. Their defensive line is completely healthy. The Bills are, like we said, getting Jordan Porter back, maybe getting Matt Milano back, lost Von Miller. But the Bills' offense is still pretty much the same, though they use that rookie James Cook a little more coming out of the backfield. But yeah, I think it's going to be the same formula for the Jets winning this game, even if they do throw it a little more on offense this time. It's going to be forcing Josh to make some mistakes. I think the Jets match up with them pretty well, defense versus offense, because they can contain a guy like Diggs, because most teams can't. So you contain a guy like him as much as you can. I think they gave a big. I think Sauce gave a big catch to him the first play of the game, and then didn't give up anything to him the rest of the game. And you'll take that again. So you hope that the cornerbacks keep holding up like they have, and the D line gets there. I think Aaron Reese, who works for us, does like a True Media notes like internally for us every week, and I think he had a stat in there that Josh was blitzed like the least amount he's been blitzed any game in that Jets game. I think he was pressured like the first or second most he's been, and that's kind of like the formula that the Jets have used to win a lot of games this year. I think they can't start as slow as they have the last 2 weeks. I think you'd be in a lot of trouble if the Bills take a big lead. I don't. It's gonna be harder to come back against the Bills than maybe it was against the Vikings, kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, the Bills are certainly more beatable than maybe we would have expected before the season. I think a lot of it's going to come down to whether they can force Josh to make mistakes and what Mike White looks like. I mean, obviously he can't throw 4 interceptions, but they're going to throw the ball more than they did last year. They're going to throw the ball more than they did in that game a couple weeks ago. So it's going to come down to, I mean, it's cliche, but I really do think it's going to come down to who turns the ball over less in this game.
Let's hope they throw it a little less than they did against Minnesota.
Yes. Yes.
The 57. You mentioned Sauce and Reed versus Diggs. He had 93 yards at the half in that game on 5 catches, and then nothing after the half. And a lot of it was Reed, who's not getting any Pro Bowl love.
I know. It's crazy,
week, right? Sauce is.
Jets Twitter slacking on that. Yeah.
Surprising. Yeah.
Yeah. So I kind of thought that was what would happen. I think earlier, I think maybe halfway through, I did like a midseason predictions kind of thing. And I said they get 2 Pro Bowlers, Quinnen and Sauce. I think Sauce, as we've talked about, he's kind of got the flashier name, flashier personality. He's obviously been amazing. Quinnen is dominating. I think DJ Reed's playing at a Pro Bowl level, but he's going to get lost in the shuffle because of the name and because only like, I forget how many corners make it, but there are a lot of good corners. So, and he's not as big of a name as a lot of these guys. So I think he's going to have a harder time making the Pro Bowl, even if he's definitely underrated at this point. And he got most of his attention last week for the, I actually laughed about it with him in the locker room about his comments about Justin Jefferson. I'm like, I said, that really blew up, huh? He's like, yeah, I started.
That's how you get to the Pro Bowl. Yeah. More comments like that.
Exactly. Yeah. Maybe that's what, like I said, he knew what he was doing when he said it because he said it multiple times. So yeah. maybe that's what his goal was. But yeah, so I think those two, I think DJ Reed and Greg Zuerlein wasn't in the top 10 for kickers, which blew my mind because that dude just kicked 5 field goals and made a 60-yarder last week. But yeah, I don't know.
I think people immediately assume the Jets kicker's terrible. It's just like it's history. It's
although LaMarcus Joyner is like in the top like 5 of safeties, which is not what you would expect based on how Jets fans feel about him. So
yeah. All right. Should we do picks? Let's do picks.
Let's do it.
Let's bring in, we're going international this week for the picks, brought to you by BetMGM, our partners at The Athletic. And we welcome Fredrik Forsman to the show from Sweden, where it is early evening or right middle of the evening at this point. Fredrik, thanks for coming on, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
And he's rocking his Jets jersey all the way international.
Sam Darnold.
Sam Darnold.
The Darnold jersey, but I have a lot of jerseys that I've collected over the years. But this one was the first I saw.
What are your thoughts?
Better than the Tebow one that Joe wore last week. Yeah.
That didn't work out well either. No. I was going to say, Fredrik, what are your thoughts on Mike White at this point?
I mean, I think he's calm and collected, and I think he brings kind of a stable aura to the position. I think he's done well. Expect from the Buffalo game last year where he threw 4 picks, but I mean that was a great defense they had in Buffalo last year. So I think he's been good. He's getting the ball out quick to the playmakers, and I really seem to be a nice person, and I like him.
Where are you in Sweden?
I'm in Stockholm, the capital.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, so,
that's the only thing I would have known. Yeah. So if you had said anything else, I would have had to.
What's the weather like this time of the year? Is it cold over there or what?
It's freezing. It's snow,
really?
And it's really cold. I think it's typical winter weather, but it's like the northern U.S. It's like that.
Yeah, we're cold too.
So we need to know. I'm sure Tim was about to ask this, but we need to know your origin story because I mean, it sounds unique on paper that is a Swedish Jets fan.
Yeah, I mean, I just New York was the first city I visited in the U.S. And I fell in love with the city. I think it's so amazing. I was there the first time when I was like 13, and I was blown away. And then I follow both hockey and the NFL, and I went to a Rangers game, then I went to a Jets game, and it was just from there I was just hooked. And then I went through the Rex Ryan era, where they went to 2 AFC Championship games, and just grew from there. And then we had the the other things happen after that with Todd Bowles and the Idzik era, and then but I've kept seeing all the games. I live. My daughter was 6 months old when she went to New York for the first time, and that Giants game 2019. So she has her own Jets jersey with her name on it, and
I love that.
I have a couple of friends who her big NFL fans as well. So we get together, play fantasy, and we go off into the London games and stuff like that.
So
I was going to ask you if you were able to get to London.
I have 2 follow-ups for you. One is, how many Jets games have you actually been? Have you been any in New Jersey? And then, do you get the games on TV in Sweden?
Yes, I've been to, I think, 8 or 9 games.
Wow.
Wow.
But I lived in the US for 2 years as well.
Okay. Gotcha.
So in college. So, but so 7 games, 5 of them at MetLife. Then one Baltimore away. It was a really cold game in 2013. We lost big with Gino as the quarterback. And then I've been to some London games. Most recently, in October, the Vikings and the Saints.
Awesome.
I went over with some friends. So, yeah, and we get the games on television, but I have the not the Jets games. We get Red Zone and like 2 games, and that's not because they have so I have the NFL Game Pass Europe where you can watch.
Oh, cool.
Game live. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I figured they had something like that.
Yeah.
I have one more just because I just have all these questions keep popping up. But where did you live in the States when you were here for a couple of years?
I lived in California my first year, where I actually met my wife.
Wow.
She's from Sweden too. So and then
so you went all the way to California to meet your wife from
meet a Swedish girl. Yeah. And then I lived in Arlington, Virginia, my last year. And then so it was closer to the Jets, so that's why I could see it was in 2013. Games, so I saw the Geno Smith debut against the Buccaneers.
Oh, nice.
So yeah,
awesome.
All right. Well, it was a rough week for the listeners last week, Frederick, but they still have the lead as we throw it up here for people on YouTube. Joe was 0-3, first 0-3 week for the listeners since week 1. He will not be pressure.
Joe pulled a Connor.
A Connor. Marissa had a good week, 2-1. She gets to 14-22. Has almost caught up with me. I was 1-2, and Zach, with the chance to really take command of this thing, also going 0-3 last week.
Just fumbled the bag.
So it was a terrible week for everyone except Marissa, who goes 2-1. The listeners still lead at 18-18, 1 game ahead of 17-19. Zach. So Frederick, you get to go first.
Okay. Well, I looked through it. I'm not going to jinx the Jets, so I'm not going to take that game. So I'm going to go with the Eagles -7 versus the Giants. I think the Eagles have a really good team, and I think the Giants are on the down.
I have that one too.
Yeah. And then I'm going to go to the former Jet quarterback bowl, Darnold versus Geno, and I'm going to go with Seattle.
I have that one too.
3.5 because I think Seattle is better than people think, and I think Carolina is terrible. And then I'm gonna actually go with the Vikings +2 versus Detroit because you give 2 points to the Vikings and they're sneaky good. They're 10-2. I think they are 10 or something like that. So I hope 3-0.
Those were all 3 of my picks. So I don't know if I should change them up right now, but I mean, great picks, Frederick. Because,
I think if you change them, you're in trouble, Marissa. I would just stick with them.
Yeah. I swear I could show you my piece of paper.
Yeah.
And I was shocked that Vikings game was.
that they're underdogs.
Yeah, I looked at the injury report and I was like, is Kirk Cousins out or something?
Right.
But,
right.
No.
Yeah, that one's weird to me. I mean, I know it's in Detroit, and I know the Lions have played like well, but yeah, kind of surprising that they were the underdogs there. So
yeah, it feels like a trick though. Right? That's one of those ones where you're like, what do they know that
Vegas
don't know?
hates the Vikings? It seems like every week their lines are weird.
Well, it's funny. We talked about this on the Football GM podcast. There's this what if NFL standings page or something, and if every one score game.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, what your record would be, and the Vikings would have like one win.
Yeah, I saw that.
If your one score games went in the opposite direction,
they won every game.
They would be like one of the worst. They would be like the worst team in the league. So yeah, it's crazy, but hey, they're not. They pulled them out. So yeah. But those are my picks too.
Yeah, well, that'll shorten the show a little. Zach, you're up.
All right, I actually am going to go Jets plus 9.5. I think it'll be a close game. So that's an easy one. Oh, not an easy one. I probably just jinxed myself.
I think BetMGM has it plus 10. So I'll give you the extra half point, Zach.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm going to go Chiefs minus 9.5. The Broncos are a dumpster. And I will do the you know what? I'm going to go Buccaneers plus 3.5. They're going against Brock Purdy, Tom Brady. Even though it's on the road, I'll take that one.
I was considering.
All right, I have that one too. I have Bucks plus 3.5 at the Niners. It just feels like the Niners, they won on emotion last week after the injury, but now like reality sets in with the third string quarterback. I got Titans -4 versus Jacksonville. I know the Jags have been playing a little bit better, but it just, I don't know, feels like the Titans need that one to keep things rolling. And then lastly, I'm going to go with every time I've taken the Patriots, I've lost this year. They just, I don't know why I'm doing this, but the Patriots -1 at Arizona. Arizona's just bad.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's the type of game where the Patriots season is slipping away completely at this point. Belichick will somehow rally the troops. And Mac Jones will look like a decent quarterback against Arizona, and they'll pull that one out. That's the Monday Night Football game. So that is it for the picks. Frederick, thank you so much for coming on, man. We appreciate it. And hopefully the sport is spreading big time in Sweden. I know it's growing everywhere in Europe, so it's good to see.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, man.
Thanks.
Thanks, Frederick. That's going to do it for us. Again, you can join The Athletic, $2 a month for 12 months. Go to theathletic.com/can't wait. Check out Zach's great story on Mike White and all the great writing that he does and all of our other writers. We will be back with you on Monday. Does Monday work?
Probably. Yeah, well, Monday. And Chris Traveler. Sorry, I just need to shout his name out. I did make a good joke about him last night.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, because Baker Mayfield on short notice led the Rams to like a crazy win over the crappy Raiders. And Chris Traveler did something similar in the preseason. He signed off the street and he wound up playing. He didn't play it. I mean, it was a preseason game. Anyway, he led a comeback victory, and his was impressive also.
And shout out
surprisingly,
to
Baker.
everyone.
Shout out to Baker. That was awesome.
Yeah. There you go. Shout out to Baker. Marissa Baker. You're a Baker fan all the way, right, Marissa?
He was always such a good teammate to Michael. That's all I'll say. And he's had a really wild year. So we were both watching last night, and Michael and I were high-fiving each other.
That's cool.
That's funny.
So,
it's always great to see these things, and even
stories like that are always
cool.
He's
back starting, right? Like,
it's
the revenge of that quarterback class here in the season. As expected, when you tweeted that, Zach, it was completely misunderstood by most of the people that replied and thought you were somehow being serious. And
has anybody met me?
Yeah, I know. Right? Twitter being Twitter. All right, that's going to do it for us. We'll talk to everybody on Monday. Hopefully, another victory Monday for the 2022 Jets.